The U.S. government has basically given the green light to Ukraine now to attack Russia deep inside Russian territory using American-made and NATO-supplied weapons. These weapons systems and types are now capable of reaching deep inside of the Russian territory, even those that can take out areas of Moscow, the capital, where Russian President Vladimir Putin travels to and from in daily governance. The U.S. says that while it does not encourage or enable Ukraine to use American weapons outside of its borders, this decision ultimately is up to the Ukrainian government. Now, that's a massive step because as soon as they started giving the weapons to Ukraine, they said, no, you can't use these to hit Russia. You can only use them to protect yourself. This shift away from that is going to be seen by Russia as an act of war, open and engaging war, from the American government against the country of Russia. You see, if your neighbors were warring against you and one of them supplied the weapons to the other that shot and killed your wife, your husband, or your children, who would be to blame here? Would it be only the neighbor that pulled the trigger? Or would you, in an act of vengeance, go after both of them? That's what Russia is going to do, and they see America as not only complicit to this war, but also an active party to it. The country of Turkey, with Erdogan as its leadership, says they may begin to part ways with the European Union in another shifting of one-time allies that shows us that this world is being divided on wartime lines. Erdogan implied that the country will end its membership, with the president saying Saturday that Turkey is going to part ways with the Union. They've implied that the country is already considering ways to end this bid to join the 27-nation bloc. They say the EU is making efforts to sever the ties with Turkey, not the other way around. He told reporters before departing the 78th UN General Assembly in New York that Turkey will have to reevaluate the situation and part ways with the EU. He responded to a question about the recent report adopted by the parliament, which stated that the accession process cannot resume under the current circumstances, and that they call on the EU to explore a parallel and a realistic framework for Turkey's relations. Turkey applied to join all the way back in 1999. We're talking about 24 years ago. The accession didn't start until 2005. Negotiations were frozen in 2018 because of a backslide of geopolitics. And the European Parliament says that Erdogan's statements, coming more than a week after Turkey's foreign minister reaffirmed the position and the resolve to join different blocs, that this is a move away from the USA, away from NATO, away from the European Union, and ultimately this will be a move toward China and toward Russia. In the United States of America, we just witnessed yesterday a possible assassination attempt. It took place after news outlets began reporting that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he was at an event, and an armed man who posed as a U.S. Marshal was arrested. It was the Wilshire Theater event, and this is going to show you that maybe there's either a curse that people just want to take out the Kennedys, or there's a operation happening right now that is doing just that. The UK Defense Ministry has said that Russia is amassing what they call significant stockpiles of missiles. And they're going to use these missiles against Ukraine and other countries, creating a air-launched cruise missile system strategy that they'll use against critical infrastructure this winter. They're warning right now that if you're in the region, European allies, Ukraine, the Defense Ministry is saying that you can expect missile attacks against your infrastructure, and these attacks will lead to long-term power outages, chaos in the rule of law, and maybe other events in your local area. Sources have indicated that Russia's military has used fewer and fewer of these missiles since April, while the Russian leaders emphasized a need to increase and an effort to increase the cruise missile production. In the fall of 2022, up until now, Russia launched a series of these strikes against energy facilities because they know that you can cause nationwide blackouts, and winter is the worst time to do it. They've primarily used air-launched cruise missiles, particularly the Kh-101, also known for its NATO reporting name, the Kodiak. The UK Defense Ministry's intelligence update says that Russia uses these strategic bomber aircraft to release munitions deep inside of Russian territory. But this is winter we're talking about. A time when people already can't afford the gas to keep their home warm. They can't afford the clothes to keep themselves warm. And they can't afford the food as energy or fuel to keep their bodies going. We are starting to see evidence now that the Polish-supplied KTO Rosomak M1 is in service with the Ukrainian 57th Motorized Brigade, and Russia is already saying that all of these NATO countries are supplying weapons and weapon systems directly to their enemies, proving in this theater of war, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it is all of NATO, driven by America, that is working to push a fight against the Russian state. Romania said that they are ready to use threat-level anti-aircraft and anti-weapon systems against Russia and Russian drones. They will use all of their military power, they say, to defend Romanian territory. And the deputy chief of defense of the staff there said that Romania is ready to go to war. Finland finished its construction of the first stretch of the border fence with Russia. The plan is to have 13 kilometers of fence topped with barbed wire. It will be placed against the Russian border, and they're going to do this in a year or two. Now, if you can start to see now that this is a concerted effort against the country of Russia, that they are literally putting them into a corner, and we all know what happens when you put a dog in the corner, you're going to get bit. And that's what's going to happen, and I hope that you and your family are doing something. We are starting to see geolocated images showing Russian attackers using incendiary munitions, this time in a forest region, reminding us that when we go to war, and when this war finally touches our homeland in America or in Canada, or even deeper into Western aligned Europe, your house will be a part of the theater of war. It might not be purposeful lighting on of fires by rebel groups or gangs. It might be your own government or an opposition group. These might be lighting up the woods to try to move or take out enemy soldiers. But it will also take out your homes, your cars, or your tents with incendiary munitions that float fiery hell from the sky to the ground. Be ready to evacuate. Be ready to go all the time. We are starting to see signs that the U.S. military is preparing to enforce the passing of a new law on Black Sea security, the Black Sea Security Act of 2023. It provides the deployment of military contingents into the Black Sea. The document is extremely important for Ukraine. It's going to ensure the presence of NATO in the Black Sea without Ukraine being a NATO member. It will positively affect, they say, the strengthening of national security. Now, details show that the consideration of this document by Congress indicates a change in the attitude of the United States. As noted, the Security Act received the support of two leading parties in the USA. It was submitted by a Democrat, Jeanne Shaheen, and Republican Mitt Romney. It indicates bipartisan support for U.S. military participation. They're going to put our soldiers right there in the middle of this war between Russia and Ukraine. Now, military experts say that the document contains important conclusions. They say it is in the interests, according to the documentation, of the USA, and by proxy, the U.S. military, to support and prevent the spread of armed conflicts in Europe. It is important to recognize the Black Sea region as an arena of Russian aggression. They say the Black Sea states are of crucial importance to counter this aggression from the Russian Federation, and according to them, to promote collective security in the countries of the North Atlantic Alliance. So you can start to see how they are moving, and this is very quiet, guys. You don't hear this talked about anywhere. When's the last time you heard this talked about? You didn't, because they put it out there. They allowed no media to really discuss it. They're going to put it into place, and they're going to have NATO allies, the U.S. military, your maybe brothers and sisters in arms, out there enforcing NATO legislation and NATO rules of law in open war. They say that the violent attempts of the Russian Federation, and you can start to hear the verbiage that they're using. They say these violent attempts to expand Russian territory and control access to the Mediterranean Sea through the Black Sea is a threat to national security of the United States and NATO. So now you're seeing the script flipped a little bit. And now, instead of Russia saying our territorial integrity, our sovereignty, or China saying our territorial integrity and our sovereignty. Now you have the USA using the exact language that will be necessary to drive us into a government approved war with Russia. They're saying this poses a threat to the national security of the United States of America and of NATO. They say it is in the interests of the USA to strengthen economic ties with Black Sea states. And in this law that was drafted on the security, it says, together with NATO members, consideration of the issues of a regular presence in the Black Sea on a rotational basis will create an opportunity for increased investment and economic expansion, particularly in the field of energy and transport infrastructure between the USA and Black Sea states. They say it will strengthen. And now I want you to remember, every day you come here and watch what's going on, right? I want you to remember that every day we talk about how economic problems lead governments to war. And so now, as they're building the foundation to drive us, approved through the US government, into open war with Russia, you can see that they're starting to give all of the constituents and they're starting to give all the politicians the backing that they need to say, hey, you're going to make more money if we go to war. So here they say the strengthening of economic ties. They say it's going to be because of energy sectors that will be introduced to the USA. What do you think that means? That means just like we went in and we took out regimes, administrations in the Middle East, and then we took over contracts for their oil platforms. Did you see an oil break? I know I sure didn't in my gas tank. But just like we did that as a government, now they're going to do that in the energy sector with things like lithium in these other countries. They say it's going to strengthen economic ties between the USA and Black Sea partners and strengthen, I want you to listen to this, the American presence and increased American investments in these states. Now, they say Washington will undertake ways to solve food security problems, ones that have arisen because of Russia. They say this problem will face critical consequences for national security of the USA if it's not left, or if it is left unchecked. Now, they say a provision of economic alternatives to forced economic options by the PRC, which destabilize and undermine economic integration, will be knocked out. The U.S. will consider placing an interstate military headquarters. This is breaking information as the USA does this. If they go through with this, and if they really push this, and they place an interstate military headquarters in the Black Sea that will be responsible to combat, plan, and be ready and conduct exercise and coordinate military activities against Russia, do you think Russia is going to let this happen? Now, they say Ukrainian authorities will have to decide on what amount of additional aid and foreign investments the USA and this Black Sea Security Act can provide. Let me tell you, people sell their families to eat, to have a house, to buy drugs. Politicians sell their citizens to eat better, to buy better drugs, and to have bigger and more houses. This is something that you have to get used to and realize, because they are selling you out. Your children will go to war for them to gain more power. But on the flip side, if they don't, the USA becomes a third world country very, very soon. Thank you guys for being here with us today and every day, only on YouTube. If you're sharing this video, which I ask you to, over to Facebook, Twitter, and anywhere else, make sure you point them over here to our YouTube channel and this community. So you can come over and subscribe to us here, leave a like and leave a comment, engage with us here. I'd really love to see 500, 700 comments here every single day, because that makes me know people are not only listening and know what's going on, they're sharing ways to be ready. So from my family to yours, please stay safe and keep watch. If you thought things were about to get better, you're wrong. The Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs has warned all Eastern counterparts to the country that there are suspicions now within the Russian government that a group of Western countries is sending military groups, their forces, to Ukraine under the guise of mercenaries. There's a consideration right now that the U.S. Army, NATO's armies, different nations participating in this war are sending their active duty troops into Ukrainian territory to fight against the Russians. Ukraine's president called for the legalization of cannabis or marijuana. All of the world's best practices, says the president. Their solutions, no matter how difficult or unusual they may be, must be applied to Ukraine so that all Ukrainian citizens do not have to endure the pain, the stress, and the trauma of war. Now, depending on your personal stance on this plant as a medicinal item, you have to think about how it will be used during a long-duration emergency. According to the U.S.-driven data that is used to create war plans among America's political circus, Russia, China, and other nations are all among the world's largest conflict bearers. They say they hold all the responsibility for the destruction of our planet, and that it is the duty of the United States of America, of NATO, and of other nations to control these actors. The Taiwanese Ministry of Defense is now reporting that 2 frigates from the Russian Pacific Fleet had earlier been detected in the Taiwan Defense Zone off of Taiwan's eastern coast. Now, the military there responded by ordering the deployment of aircraft as well as ships from the Navy in the direction of the frigates while placing shore-based anti-ship batteries on high alert. We're just waiting right now for one of these sparks to finally catch inside of the tinderbox and things to go hot with maybe even nuclear war around our planet. Talking about Russia and the supposed coup attempt that had taken place,